Tonight, India's doctors are saying no more.
Welcome to News English Explained. Today's story touches on a critical issue in India. We'll be discussing the shocking events that have led to a nationwide protest among doctors, focusing on the tragic case of a junior doctor who was allegedly raped and murdered. Let's get started.
Tonight, India's doctors are saying no more, preparing to shut down hospitals for 24 hours over the alleged rape and murder of a junior doctor that's put a spotlight on women's rights in the world's most populous country. The protests, now in their second week, are growing in size, cropping up in cities across the country, from Mumbai to New Delhi, and in Kolkata, where the murder took place last week. Authorities say a 31-year-old doctor in training was on the overnight shift at a government hospital and took a nap in a lecture hall. Her body later discovered covered in blood, and an autopsy confirming she was raped. But this movement is about more than one murder. Even after the gang rape of a young woman in Delhi on a moving bus back in 2012, 4 men were convicted of that rape and sentenced to death, and a juvenile served time in prison. Official statistics showed there were more than 31,000 rapes reported in India in 2022, a 20% jump from the year before, and a conviction rate of less than 30%. Atrocities prompting a national reckoning in India tonight, women and doctors insisting enough is enough. That national strike will start tomorrow and last for 24 hours. The Indian Medical Association says all hospitals, public and private, will shut down with the exception of emergency services, grinding the medical system to a halt in the nation of more than 1.4 billion people.
The news anchor begins the story by highlighting that doctors in India are preparing to shut down hospitals for 24 hours. This isn't just any protest. It's a direct response to the alleged rape and murder of a junior doctor. Let's break down this sentence a bit. The word alleged is crucial in legal and news contexts. It means that something is claimed to have happened but hasn't been proven yet. In this case, alleged rape and murder indicates that these events are believed to have occurred, but there hasn't been a final legal judgment. You might hear this term often in news reports because it's important to avoid assuming guilt before a court decides. For example, if someone is accused of a crime, the media will say they are the alleged perpetrator until they are found guilty in court. The anchor continues by explaining that this incident has put a spotlight on women's rights in the world's most populous country. To put a spotlight on something means to draw attention to it, especially something that needs to be addressed or fixed. In this case, the anchor is referring to the ongoing issues of women's rights in India, a country with over 1.4 billion people, making it the most populous in the world. This phrase is often used in both literal and figurative contexts. For example, in a theater, a spotlight is a strong beam of light that focuses on a specific area or person on stage. Similarly, when we say a social issue is put in the spotlight, it means that the issue is being highlighted or given more attention by society. Another example could be, the recent data breach has put a spotlight on the importance of cybersecurity. Next, the anchor tells us that the protests are now in their second week and are growing in size. When we say something is growing in size, we mean it is getting bigger or involving more people. These protests are spreading across cities like Mumbai, New Delhi, and Kolkata, which is where the tragic incident took place. The phrase cropping up in cities across the country is another way of saying that these protests are appearing in many places around India. To crop up means to appear suddenly or unexpectedly. For example, new challenges keep cropping up as we implement the new software. It gives the idea that something has emerged or appeared without much warning. The story then provides details about the victim, a 31-year-old doctor in training. She was working an overnight shift at a government hospital and took a nap in a lecture hall. Unfortunately, her body was later discovered, covered in blood. Autopsy is the next key term. An autopsy is a medical examination of a dead body to determine the cause of death. Autopsies are usually performed by medical examiners or forensic pathologists. The results can be critical in determining how and why someone died. For example, if someone dies under suspicious circumstances, an autopsy can reveal whether the death was due to natural causes, an accident, or foul play. In this case, the autopsy confirmed that the doctor had been raped. The phrase "covered in blood" is quite graphic and emphasizes the brutality of the crime. It's important to understand that news stories sometimes use strong language like this to convey the seriousness of the situation. But as the anchor mentions, this movement is about more than one murder. Here, movement refers to a large group of people working together to achieve a common goal, in this case, to fight against violence towards women. The word movement is often used to describe social or political efforts that aim to create significant change. For example, the civil rights movement in the United States was a pivotal period in the fight for racial equality. In the context of this story, the movement is about addressing the broader issue of women's safety and rights in India. The anchor reminds us of a horrific event in 2012 where a young woman was gang raped on a moving bus in Delhi. Gang rape is a term used when more than one person is involved in the sexual assault of a victim. This case received international attention and led to widespread protests and demands for justice. The phrase "moving bus" highlights the audacity and public nature of the crime, which shocked many people around the world. The severity of this crime led to the conviction of 4 men who were sentenced to death. A conviction is when someone is found guilty of a crime in a court of law. In this case, the court found enough evidence to prove that these men were responsible for the crime. The term "sentenced to death" means that the court decided the punishment for these men would be the death penalty. However, it's important to note that the death penalty is a highly controversial issue, with many people arguing for and against its use. The anchor also mentions that a juvenile involved in the crime served time in prison. A juvenile is a young person who is not yet considered an adult under the law, usually under the age of 18. Because of their age, juveniles are often treated differently by the legal system, with a focus on rehabilitation rather than punishment. However, in cases of severe crimes, juveniles can sometimes be tried as adults, depending on the laws of the country. The story then shifts to statistics, noting that despite these convictions, the problem of rape in India has not gone away. Official statistics showed more than 31,000 rapes were reported in India in 2022, which was a 20% increase from the previous year. This statistic is alarming, and the anchor uses the term "atrociously" to describe the situation. Atrociously means something is shockingly bad or monstrous. The word atrocity is often used to describe extremely wicked or cruel acts, usually involving physical violence or injury. For example, the atrocities committed during the war left a deep scar on the nation. In this news story, the term is used to emphasize the gravity and scale of the problem. Despite the high number of reported rapes, the conviction rate is less than 30%, meaning that less than 30% of reported cases lead to someone being found guilty of the crime. This low conviction rate is concerning because it suggests that many perpetrators are not being held accountable for their actions. The word accountable means being responsible for something and being required to explain your actions. In a legal context, holding someone accountable means ensuring they face the consequences of their actions. For example, the manager was held accountable for the financial losses the company suffered due to poor decisions. The anchor then says that this situation is prompting a national reckoning in India tonight. Prompting means causing something to happen, and a reckoning is a time when people are forced to confront and deal with difficult or unpleasant situations. In this case, the national reckoning is India's confrontation with the issue of violence against women. The word reckoning can also be used in other contexts, such as when people face the consequences of their actions or when a long-standing issue finally comes to a head. For example, the company's environmental reckoning came after years of neglecting pollution controls. As the story continues, we learn that women and doctors are saying, "Enough is enough." This phrase is often used when people have had enough of something and want it to stop immediately. It expresses a sense of finality and determination to bring about change. For example, after years of being underpaid and overworked, the employees decided enough was enough and went on strike. In the context of this news story, the phrase reflects the frustration and anger of women and doctors who are demanding an end to violence against women. They are calling for a 24-hour national strike starting tomorrow. A strike is when a group of workers refuses to work as a form of protest, usually to demand better conditions or changes. Strikes are often used as a last resort when negotiations between workers and employers fail to achieve a satisfactory outcome. For example, the teachers' union went on strike after failing to reach an agreement with the school district on salary increases. In this case, the Indian Medical Association has announced that all hospitals, both public and private, will shut down, except for emergency services. The phrase, grinding the medical system to a halt, is a powerful image. To grind something to a halt means to stop it completely, often in a way that is sudden or disruptive. In a literal sense, you might think of machinery coming to a stop with a loud, screeching noise. In this story, the phrase is used metaphorically to describe how the strike will cause the entire medical system in India to stop functioning, which could have serious consequences in a country with over 1.4 billion people. Now that we've gone through the details of the story and the vocabulary, let's watch the news clip again, this time without subtitles.
Tonight, India's doctors are saying no more, preparing to shut down hospitals for 24 hours over the alleged rape and murder of a junior doctor that's put a spotlight on women's rights in the world's most populous country. The protests, now in their second week, are growing in size, cropping up in cities across the country, from Mumbai to New Delhi, and in Kolkata, where the murder took place last week. Authorities say a 31-year-old doctor in training was on the overnight shift at a government hospital and took a nap in a lecture hall. Her body later discovered covered in blood, and an autopsy confirming she was raped. But this movement is about more than one murder. Even after the gang rape of a young woman in Delhi on a moving bus back in 2012, 4 men were convicted of that rape and sentenced to death, and a juvenile served time in prison. Official statistics showed there were more than 31,000 rapes reported in India in 2022, a 20% jump from the year before, and a conviction rate of less than 30%. Atrocities prompting a national reckoning in India tonight. Women and doctors doctors insisting enough is enough. That national strike will start tomorrow and last for 24 hours. The Indian Medical Association says all hospitals, public and private, will shut down with the exception of emergency services, grinding the medical system to a halt in the nation of more than 1.4 billion people.
And that's the end of today's lesson. Thank you so much for tuning in to News English Explained. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more lessons. Have a great day and keep practicing your English.